today, John Schlitt and Zach Williams are rock stars in recovery. Both entertainers struggled with suffocating addictions that could have killed them. But today, they're survivors. They're sober, and they're saved. We go backstage to find out how they did it.
Joining me at No Greater Love in Cochrane, Alberta is the former lead singer to the Christian rock band Petra, John Schlitt.
Thank you. It's great to be here. It really is.
Now, John, we just met a little while ago, and I was watching you on stage. So am I wrong in saying that you love people?
I do love people. Yes, I do. Thank you for asking. Yeah, I see us as brothers and sisters, created in the image of God. And the fact that they're here at a Christian festival is exciting to me.
Well, it's amazing because I just felt like in 3 minutes of talking, I knew you. But I remember you way back when I was a teenager, so.
Wow.
They say that your story begins in a world of brash, hard-fisted rock and roll music. They say John was described as a fiery tenor with unbridled passion to sing, which I would say true. But that led you into an 8-year stint with the secular rock group Head East in the 70s. So let me ask, how did you ever get involved with rock and roll music?
I've always liked it because it just seems to, it just has a passion of its own. So I would go in that direction, and that's always been the style I've always sang.
In 1980,
Yes.
it all changed.
Yes.
Because the band fired you, you had an out-of-control drug and alcohol addiction. What happened to John?
Well, I didn't start out that way. When I first joined the band, I just wanted to play good music. I wanted to make sure the crowd was having a great time. The problem is it wasn't on stage, it was backstage. And I believed in God from the time I was old enough to walk, but I didn't know anything about Jesus Christ, and which made me fair game in the secular rock system. And got, the enemy took it and used it. And I went from a guy just wanting to play good music from a little town to an alcoholic Coke freak.
Wow.
And it did almost destroy my life.
I was going to say, how deep did you go in that world?
Deep enough to, when it was all said and done, about 6 months after I got fired, and you got to think about this, I got fired for being too much of a drug and alcoholic from guys who were drug and alcoholics, So, I mean, I was the extreme of all of them. And looking back at it, I thank them for it. But at the time, I just didn't know how bad I was. I thought I could give it up. The minute I left the band, I couldn't do it. I was trapped.
I heard you refer to yourself a few times prior to your Christian faith as an animal on stage.
Yes.
Now, help me understand that.
Well, a lead singer in a secular rock group, especially heavy, we were considered a little heavy. He's supposed to go out and be Mr. Big Time, Mr. Ballsy guy, gutsy.
Yeah.
And with that went language. And I got to a point where I was spewing every 4-letter word I could think of because that was what was expected. And looking back, I came from a little town. That wasn't my cup of tea. But I created this monster because that's what people expected for this kind of rock music. At least that was my mindset. So I called myself a monster when I was on stage and came off. I wasn't that way. The monster started coming home months after I was fired. That's when I realized that I may be in deeper trouble than I thought. In fact, it's a time when it was the final straw where I think the enemy thought he had me, and a little voice goes, you're worth more dead than alive, because the monster was home.
At some point in this out-of-control stage, when
Yes.
when this was ending or coming to the point where you thought you would end. Your wife, Dorla.
Yes, Dorla.
Dorla. She came to Jesus.
Yes.
Now, how did John react to that when that took place?
The same 6-month period, I went on a binge. And I mean, band fired me. I was going to build a new band to show them they really made a mistake. But really it was nothing but an excuse for me to stay either drunk or coked up 24 hours a day for about 6 months and live through it. And you say, oh, no, you can't do that. Oh, yeah, you can if you've been doing it for three or 4 years before that. So my body, I was on a 6-month binge. That same 6-month period, my wife gets saved. And it was making me mad. Oh, I couldn't believe that she was becoming one of those weirdo Christians on top of everything else in my life. And every once in a while I'd come home in my pity party and she'd be all happy and joyous. And I'm going, what world are you living in? And she'd try to tell me. And I'm going, oh no, I don't want to hear. And then she'd be quiet and she wouldn't say anything. Just she'd bide her time.
You would say to her, and I'm quoting you, get out of my face. I don't need this Jesus stuff. I'm too cool for Jesus. I'll tell you, I'll become a Christian when I'm rich, famous, done everything, too old to have any fun, and then I'll just do, and you go, to be safe. Now, it's the to be safe comment that gets my attention. What were you saying?
Anyone that has any understanding of religion, and I hate using that word, to them religion is like a safety belt. They don't equate it to Jesus, but they say, they go, well, I'll be on good standing with God just in case God exists. And that was sort of my attitude. Again, I prayed every day. I prayed to God. I didn't pray to, Jesus was just another figure in the history book called the Bible. My life changed shortly after that comment, too.
Falls are the #1 cause of injury to senior citizens. Acorn Stairlifts has a solution. Just don't fall.
You mentioned a little earlier, you reached that dark point in your life when you were going to take John's life. You were more, I guess, more rich dead than you would be alive. So tell us about that dark moment and then what happened.
Well, it was the day after our anniversary, and I'd gotten so plowed that I passed out before we could go to our celebration. I woke up the next day on the couch for the first time, and my little 1-year-old son was looking at me going, Dad, that face, that little 1-year-old innocent face of, why are you here on the couch? And that's when the voice says, you're worth more dead than alive. And I said, yes, that's true. And also my wife taps me on the shoulder and goes, John, remember, you promised you'd come and talk to my pastor tonight. I go, when? She says, last night when you were drunk. And I go, okay. But I said okay with the opinion that I just wanted her to remember I was going to try. I had no intentions of changing. I had my plan. I was going to end my life, and I was going to get out of the way of my family so they could find somebody better. And that was my attitude. I went into this pastor's house that night with an attitude. I walked out with the Holy Spirit. My whole life changed. And that's the best way to put it. I didn't realize, and just with simple questions, Jesus? Well, yeah, I'm an American. I go to church twice a year. You don't know Jesus. You don't know that Jesus loves you. You know that Jesus has a plan for your life. You don't know that Jesus knows exactly what you're doing right now. And I'm sitting on the couch going, what's going on? And I couldn't talk. It was like, finally, Pastor goes, you want to know Jesus? I could just shake my head. And after that, finally, after I finally calmed down or whatever it was, we said the sinner's prayer, and a weight lifted off of my shoulders like I didn't even realize. I didn't realize it was there. But it was the beginning of a new life for me, and I absolutely realized it was Jesus Christ, and that's it. And then that's when I discovered that, yes, I'd prayed to God, but I didn't realize the sacrifice of God in human form gave me a chance to actually be able to have this second chance, third chance, fourth chance, you know, because as we fail every day, it's still another chance.
Yeah.
Isn't he amazing?
Yeah, amazing. So everything changed.
Oh, but
And then that led you into a whole world of Christian rock and roll with Petra.
not immediately.
No?
No, for 5 years. I had created that band, and called the Johnny Band, and I became a Christian. And being a baby Christian, I knew it all. So I had all these commitments to this new band, and we go out, and I mean, there were more temptations and failures. I mean, the enemy didn't want to let go, and I mean, I had more temptations for that little band than I'd had for years in Head East, doing all the big festivals. Finally, the church, loving church, I'd come home from the weekend feeling totally disgusted. The church would come in and say, John, we're praying for you. The enemy wants you. He's not going to have you. And they kept supporting me and praying for me. And finally, I just said, I can't handle this anymore. And my wife also said, listen, it's music or me. And that was the final straw. I just, okay, great. And that was another big release for me. Yeah. And when I said that, I meant I gave up music forever. I'd never sing again. I wouldn't listen to radio. The stuff I heard at the time, Christian, was very boring to me. Not that it wasn't fantastic, it just wasn't my style. Yeah. And so I figured I'd never sing again. And I had graduated as a civil engineer. And so I cut my hair, got a 3-piece suit, decided I was going to be a civil engineer with a resume saying, graduated from the University of Illinois, rock star. And that didn't sell very well. So it was a long road through a 5-year period of only God providing the doors to open just at the right time.
Right, to get you back into music then.
Yes.
So let me fast forward.
Okay.
You had the great years of Petra.
Yes.
A couple of years ago with Billy Smiley,
Yes.
you put together the band Union of Sinners and Saints. Explain the name.
Well, think about it. First of all, it was a union of Petra and Whiteheart together. The two of us had never worked together before. We felt it was a wonderful, it was nice to join together. And then we were trying to find that perfect word. We wanted union, it was taken up. We wanted sinners and saints, that was taken. So we finally said, you know what, the Union of Sinners and Saints has a good ring. It really says what we want to say, but it also made a point of we're all sinners. We're born sinners. We're man. We were fallen. But through Jesus Christ, the sacrifice of his blood, we become saints. So it's the union of sinners and saints. And it's a great conversation piece. Yeah. Someone always asks about it.
Yeah, great. Well, listen, John, one final question. With however long the Lord gives you to use your gift in music and song, what do you want to do for him?
I want to be available. I want to be relevant. I want to be able to be as useful in the skills, the blessings, the whatever he's given me. There's no such thing as retirement in the Word. I don't accept that. But as long as God allows me to sing, I'm going to sing for him, because I believe that's why he gave me the voice he has. And I'm excited about it. Of course, another thing, you never work a day in life if you love what you do.
That's right.
So it's not like I'm making a big sacrifice, you know. My biggest thank you to God is that he lets me do it as long as he has.
It don't matter who you are or where you've been. Just reach out, you reach in. Ooh, yeah, you reach in.
Cancer connects us all. We all
Rock stars in recovery.
Locked these prison bars, and I'm a slave no longer to the dark. Forever chased, forever yours.
Joining me at No Greater Love in Cochrane, Alberta, is a gentleman who grew up in a Christian home, then turned sports star, turned addict, turned rock star, and then came to Jesus Christ.
Thanks for having me, man.
You know, Zach, your story of freedom in Jesus is reflected in your debut single, Chainbreaker, that came out in the summer of 2016. And since then, I have heard, and many people have been influenced by that song that just experienced the power of God breaking chains and bondages in their life. And your story is no different.
Yeah.
But before we get into it, tell us about your childhood, because you describe it as like storybook.
Yeah, and I grew up in a Christian home. My mom and dad were very much involved in church planning. My dad owned a construction company, and he led worship part-time. And I just remember never wanting for anything. It was, pretty much a perfect childhood. At an early age, they really instilled in me like the roots and planted the seed of what it was to put your faith in Jesus Christ. And, I know had it not been for their prayer and their example of who Jesus Christ is, that I wouldn't have the opportunities that I've had today.
Wow.
So.
Now, as you're growing up and you have this strong Christian home upbringing, sometimes people find it hard that someone in that kind of environment then kind of turns and gets involved in all these vices, etc. I mean, how does that happen?
I think for me, I had a lot of friends that didn't have the same childhood. They didn't have the same upbringing. There's always that one kid whose house you can go to and party and do stuff that nobody else's parents or nobody else lets you do. And we found that guy, and that was a place we always hung out at. And so by the time I was in 10th grade, we were drinking on the weekends and having parties, and I started smoking pot and got involved in drugs, and just one thing led to another. And you're always searching for that next thing, and that's just kind of how it was for me. And once I'd had it once, it was like I could never top that, so I wanted something better. And that was my personality, and I think it's great that it is my personality, because now that I've found Christ, I want to be as good as I can be and live my life the best that I can for the Lord. So.
Yeah, and then you go on to college. The drinking and alcohol follow you in college?
Yeah, I lost a Division I scholarship my senior year in high school. I got in trouble for drugs, and I was expelled from school, and I got a GED, and I started working for my dad's construction company, and literally thought my life was over. And I remember, getting this opportunity to go try out for this college team, and I made the team, got a full scholarship, moved up there, but I found myself 3 hours away from home with exactly the same thing going on that I was doing in high school. Everybody's partying every night. Day before my first basketball game, I tore 5 ligaments in my ankle and pretty much ended my career. And I think that's where kind of, God has plans for our lives. And for me, that plan started to unfold that freshman year. I taught myself how to play guitar and fell in love with music. Unfortunately, the music led me down pretty much a dark road for 15 years of my life, just struggling with drugs, alcohol, party lifestyle, just trying to make the right decision.
Yeah. I guess the world of rock and roll music opened up for you. What was that like for Zach?
Yeah, I carried, from the time I taught myself how to play guitar when I was 19, I carried a guitar with me for about 10 years, just playing for anybody and everybody that would listen. And in my mid-20s, I joined a band. And soon after joining the band, we recorded a record, and we got a booking agent, and we started touring Europe, touring all over the U.S. And I found myself just in this vicious, reckless cycle of, well, this is what you do if you're a rock star. And I justified the drug use and the alcohol use with the rock and roll lifestyle. And honestly, it wasn't until my late 20s when I met my wife that, she was like, you got to make some changes. You're a wreck, But she was a wreck too. And I would look at her and go, well, you got to make some changes. And, we struggled with that for about 5 years of our marriage until we both just got to this place where it was like, the only thing that can fix this is Jesus. And that was it for me, So.
Now, in your world of rock and roll, I read where you mentioned you kind of got to this point where you felt like you were faking it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, I think you create a persona for yourself. You look at these other people that you want to be like. And for me, I felt like I was trying to be somebody that I wasn't. It honestly wasn't until I gave my life to the Lord that it really was like the first time I played music on a stage leading worship at church that I was like comfortable in my own skin. I knew I wasn't faking it because it didn't matter what I was doing. It was not about the people on the stage. It was an audience of one, and it sank into me like, hey, this is this is exactly where I'm supposed to be, you know.
And I think I have this correct. In 2011, you had a cancer scare.
I did, yeah.
And that kind of pushed you back to your childhood upbringing, your roots, and that's how you came back to Christ?
Yeah, I had a cancer scare with my esophagus. I was diagnosed with early stages of cancer in my esophagus, and I remember going to the guys in my band and kind of telling them, hey, I need to step back. And it didn't go as well as I thought it was. I can remember, you know, finding kind of out who my true friends were at that moment. And for me, I kind of downward spiraled into a little bit of depression and even, you know, a harder living. And it was about a year and a half later, we were getting ready to leave for Europe, and we were on a tour. My wife kind of looked at me and she said, you know, things don't change before you come home. If you come home worse, then I can't be around. And she was pregnant with our fourth child. And I left on that tour, and I was just like, God, I know you're real, but like I need you to prove it to me on this tour. And I left a week into that tour. We were driving across Spain. A bus driver was scanning stations, and Big Daddy Weave's Redeemed came across the radio in Spain. And it just hit me like a lightning bolt. And it was like, I heard God say, I see you differently than you see yourself. And it all clicked right there in that moment. And all the prayer, all the talks with my parents, it made sense. And I called my wife. I said, I'm done. Canceling the shows, coming home, quitting my band, and we're going to start going to church. And for me, that was the turning point. That song, just amazing.
Is that when you kind of rededicated your life to Christ at that moment?
It was. Came home, had that moment, fall on my hands, knees, just God, I can't do this. I don't know what this means. Like, where do I go from here? I just want to be a good dad, a good husband, and just kind of stepped back. And we got involved in church. We were there every Wednesday, every Sunday. We got in growth groups, life groups. So just you know, anything we could get. And about 6 months later, the church asked me to lead worship one Sunday, and I led Redeemed by Big Daddy Weave, and that was the first thing I ever sang in church. And I just remember God just started opening door after door after door, like quicker than I could walk through them. And a year later, I was working for the church, launched a campus, and me and my wife, I was a campus director and worship pastor for a new campus at a church. I worked there for 4 years, and I mean, I thought I was exactly where I was supposed to be.
Yeah.
And here comes some guy from Nashville with his family for Christmas. His wife were members of our church, and they were just visiting, and he heard me sing at Christmas and said, I'm a record producer, a songwriter. I would love to take you out to coffee and hear your story. And I went and had coffee with him. He invited me to Nashville to write some music, and we wrote Chainbreaker together. So
wow.
Yeah.
And the rest is history.
The rest is history. Yeah.
One final question, Zach. Your message to people today is this: make a decision to follow Jesus. You have a person's attention right now.
Yeah.
Take a moment and encourage that person to make that decision, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I think for me, man, my whole message is just, I grew up with this idea of God, that he was just kind of sitting around with his arms crossed looking at every little wrong thing that you did. And it wasn't until I had children that I understood that he's not like that at all, you know. He's going to give you every chance you need, just like I'm going to give my children, just like you're going to give your children. And you know, I made it so hard all these years to give my life to the Lord when he had already made it so easy. I mean, it was like he would died for me, for you, for any one of these people. He would have bled on that cross. And I think when you truly get grace and you understand his grace and mercy on your life, and you realize I'm never going to be perfect, I'm never going to have it all together. And the cool thing is we don't have to, because he was the perfect one. And there's so much freedom in living in that, and just knowing that his blood covers a multitude of things that we're going to do, you know, and every day we're just trying to be better and more like him. For me, that's worth not waiting another day and making that decision. So
There's a better life. Oh, there's a better life. If you got pain, he's a pain taker. If you feel lost, he's a way maker. If you need freedom, a savior, he's a prison trying to feel the same old holes inside. There's a better life. feel it, somebody testify. You're the voice of love that's calling. There's a chair that waits for you, and a friend who understands everything you're going through. But you keep standing at a distance in the shadow of your shame. But there's a light of hope that's shining. Won't you come take your place and bring it all to the table? It's nothing